If you incarnated in a woman's body, la fa fatal, la femme fatale, la fa fatale.
Yeah.
I'd always turn the camera off when Andreas was yelling.
The guys all had to go to the gym. People waxed their bodies.
He really did not like fat people. He always told us we're a non-group. We're an anti-cult.
Namaste. Controlling, brainwashing fellow. I beg you, please. When are you going to wake up?
We used to joke, even in the early days, if this was a cult, at least it was a really good cult.
Everything he did was a manipulation for some narcissistic, maniacal end.
I don't think anyone really knew who he was.
He just became stranger and stranger and more paranoid and more possessive.
Can't say no. No is against the rules.
All these boys came out. All these boys.
It's so common. It's everywhere. Look around you. You've got a cult in your town. I almost guarantee you.
I am in you. But in truth, there's no I, there's no you. So come.
Today I want to talk about a cult. Again, it's interesting because this one, I've actually watched this documentary years ago, like 2016, and I never forgot it. There's one particular clip that I've never, ever forgotten. Recently, Netflix has this series called How to Be a Cult Leader, which I watched. The Buddafield cult was one of those mentioned, and it made me be like, oh my God, I want to watch that documentary again, which I did, and it was like crazier the second time around. So I was like, oh my God, what has happened since then? So looked into it, and we need to talk about it. The whole thing started in the 60s when Jaime Gomez went to Hollywood. Jaime Gomez was from a wealthy ranching family in Venezuela. So you could say that he was rich, but he wanted to be rich and famous, not just rich. The thing is, he never became a movie star, but he did become famous for being a cult leader. So, you know, a win's a win. So Jaime, he loved to say that he was in Rosemary's Baby, which is like a super well-known movie. But the thing is, he only had like a tiny non-speaking role where it was literally like seconds of the movie. But, you know, he loved to say that he was in Rosemary's Baby, which technically he was. He's not lying. As part of his quest to become famous, he ends up changing his name, which will happen a lot. So I'm going to need you to keep track. So Jaime Gomez changes his name to Michelle Rostand, but that didn't help his career either.
He was an actor, and I assumed probably a good one until I saw some of his acting.
So instead of trying to be an actor, he decides, I'm going to be a ballet dancer because he's like really good at ballet, or so he thought. He ends up saying, okay, you know what? I'm going to do porn, right? Like the natural progression. And that's sarcasm. And because people on YouTube, sometimes they don't understand sarcasm. I learned that the hard way. Anyway, apparently he wasn't that great at being a porn star either. But, you know, he ends up finding something that he's really, really good at, which is being a manipulative bullshitter. He's very good at that. And that's how he becomes a cult leader. So how did it happen? So he's in LA and he's openly gay. So this is in West Hollywood. I don't know if you're familiar with LA, but that's like a very gay friendly area, you could say. And he has this yoga class that he teaches in West Hollywood. And he has like women and men that are gay and straight and like everything in between. But he is sort of this edgy. This is in the 80s, by the way. He's like this edgy, sort of like non-conventional yoga instructor. And soon it begins to circulate among the students of his yoga class that these yoga classes are not what you guys want to be into. What you want to be into is the secret meetings that they have and this like exclusive group.
He always told us we're a non-group. We're an anti-cult.
Namaste.
controlling, brainwashing fellow. I beg you, please.
The guy who actually made the documentary, by the way, the documentary is called Holy Hell, and the filmmaker was a member of the cult, an ex-member, and he joined in 1985. His sister brought him in. So by the 1980s, the Buddafield, it has hundreds of members. And the way that they lived was kind of interesting. It wasn't like a full-on commune or home where they all lived together, but there were clearly two levels of members of this cult. So you had Michelle, aka Jaime. Michelle was the leader, and there were a few elite members that lived with him. All the other members, which were like on the bottom level, they lived in their own homes and they worked. They had jobs. Michelle and the elite members, they didn't work. They didn't have jobs. And so it was the lower levels work that funded the elite members. The way that they justified this is that the elite members were working, they were serving Michelle, the leader, and they would call this like service. They would do this service, which was basically like tucking him in bed, cooking for him, cleaning for him, worshiping him. At one point, there was even a guy whose whole entire job was to carry this big chair everywhere they went and like put this chair down so that anywhere they went, Michelle had this like chair to sit on. And so it was weird, but they were doing it. So one of the like lower level members explains this. They said, we paid for everything they had, including food. Then he would charge us to have counseling sessions with him, during which he learned our secrets. He knew all the secrets in our closet, all our fears, everything. Later, he would use them to control us. These counseling sessions are called cleansings. What they didn't know at the time was that Michelle, Jaime, the teacher, whatever, he had like some sort of license in hypnotherapy. Okay. And so he would essentially like hypnotize them.
And he has this really deep hypnotic voice.
Okay, close your eyes.
Back in time, down the steps.
Then he'd snap his fingers and...
You're there. How old are you?
And get them to admit basically their innermost, desires, triggers, fears, like everything.
I divulged every secret, every thought, every fear.
Whatever transpires here between you and I should be kept here.
And he would use that to manipulate each member. And then he also would charge them, each member, $50 per session. This is in the 80s. And they were required to, among other things we'll talk about later, but they were required to have these sessions weekly. So he had hundreds of members by this time, and they're each paying him $50 a week for years. Not to mention, he's also living off of like the jobs that they have. They're like paying his rent, buying his food, everything. And he's like their guru. So why would they trust this man? Why? Okay. And we're going to get into the crazy shit they did and that happened. But I had to explain to you like the draw, or what they claim was the draw. And it was basically called The Knowing. This video is sponsored by Every Plate. Every Plate is actually America's best value meal kit. They're 25% cheaper than grocery shopping, and they actually offset 100% of their delivery emissions. Not only are they affordable and sustainable, but the meals are so good. Okay, this one right here, it's got everything I love, which is meat and cheese and veggies that are like savory. I just love savory things. So it's like a meatloaf. They're mini and they're stuffed with cheese, a little bit of cheese on top. And then you've got this like fajita style onion bell pepper thing on top. And you can totally customize the sides. So I went with broccoli. And that's another thing. It's like really easy to customize and make it what you like. So if you guys are interested, you can get $1.49 per meal by going to everyplate.com and entering the code 49Noor. That's $1.49 by going to everyplate.com and entering code 49Noor. Thank you so much to Everyplate, and thank you guys for watching. Back to the video.
The knowing was the realization of being able to see and hear and taste God.
One of the things that made the knowing so intriguing was that not everyone was going to be able to receive it.
I wanted what I thought he had. I wanted the knowing. I wanted this promise of enlightenment.
Who's the only person that can give you the knowing is Michelle, the cult leader. And he would sort of see, are you ready for the knowing? Oh, I don't think so. Oh, you're ready for the knowing? Are you ready? And so whoever got the knowing would tell other people like, oh my God, like the knowing is like the best thing ever. And so like people stuck around for a really long time to get the knowing. So back to the cleansings. The thing about the cleansing was he actually was using that not just to manipulate his followers, but to groom his young male followers into basically being almost like a concubine for him. He had all the different ones and they didn't know about each other. It's crazy. Okay, let me tell you. First thing is that he preached celibacy. And this was like a big part of the Buddafield cult. He claimed that like, sex or even masturbation, like orgasms, any type of thing like that was a lower level, low vibrational thing. And that like true enlightenment and like all that pleasure you get from that is nothing compared to meditation.
One who has experienced the orgasm of meditation, that's the greatest orgasm.
So he was like, I'm celibate and you guys need to be celibate. Like, that's it. But the thing is, he wasn't celibate and none of the followers were celibate either, because this group, they were mostly young and they were all very, very good looking. They actually were known locally as like the cult of beautiful people. And so according to ex-members, they say that although everyone pretended to be celibate, like they were actually all having sex with each other, but like under like on the down low. And that some people would call it Buddafield instead of Buddafield because everybody was, quote, effing everybody. But the difference is those situations were like members with each other and it seemed consensual. What happened with the cult leader and during the cleansings is very different. They revere him and he's like almost their god, pretty much. So it starts with him being like, well, like if you are truly like one with, your God and your master, which apparently was him, and you should be like naked in front of your God. Slowly, he would introduce little things that were sort of sexual, little by little, and like be like, these are healing, these are cleansing, this is like a blockage you have, this is a whatever. And so it slowly ended up being this basically like sex, right? The thing is, they're all supposed to be celibate. So he makes them feel like they're very special and that like they're the only ones that have this thing with him and that they're doing this thing because they're like enlightened and it's like this other secretive level of shit. But come to find out, he's doing this with a lot of these younger male members and none of them know about each other and they all think they're special and that this is like a weird thing, but it's like he's just using all of them. And charging them, by the way, $50 for each one of these cleansings.
You can't say no. No is against the rules. Then I had to pay him. I had to pay him for fucking therapy. What a deal. Can you even imagine? Here I am, like helping this guy every day with his chair, and I hate him. But still somehow I'm here in this group, going through the motions, serving him. I felt like I was going mad.
So obviously some of those members didn't want to do it. And they just, even with the slow and the manipulation, they still sort of felt like, no, I don't want to do this.
And I'd be like, I'm resisting you. I don't want to have sex with you. He's like, no. Let's go back to your childhood.
So I'll read you a quote of one of these men, what he said. He said, when I suggested that I did not want to have sex with him, his answer to me was, maybe you don't need to be here anymore. Maybe you've outgrown this. It was like being threatened with excommunication. I didn't want to pay that price because what would I do? Where would I go? This is my path. Remember, they're all sticking around to get the knowing, right? And so he says, it didn't register as abuse. I just thought, it's my problem. Why am I not surrendered? I just didn't ever know what was happening to me. And then I had to love him like he was my guru. I had to honor and respect him as my guru. And that's when I started hating him. I was PTSD without even knowing it. Another insane element of all of this was that this was in the 80s. So the AIDS epidemic was going on, and everyone said that Michelle was especially terrified of getting AIDS. He also, though, never wanted to get tested. Will Allen, the guy who made the documentary, he said, he was grooming men, and this is my theory from my experience, but he would never let anyone get tested for AIDS. We weren't allowed because he said our mind and our fear would create it, even if we were HIV negative. But because you couldn't get tested, he would tell us not to have sex either. So we were not having sex, supposedly, and not getting tested. Later, I realized that he wanted all his little concubine men that he got involved with to be clean so they wouldn't bring anything to him because he was never going to get tested. Now, there was this one boy that he kept virginal for 20 years before he took his virginity. He'd been manipulating him for years, and then he would have sex with him without a condom because he knew it was safe. And that was shocking to me, just unbelievably shocking. Then there was this other thing, which was the insane rules and the strict routine that he had them all doing. No sugar, no caffeine, no alcohol. But then it was these rigorous workout sessions to where, remember how he wanted to be ballet, professional ballet dancer. So he would have them all do these ballet classes for 5 hours a day. And he was yell at them and berate them during these classes.
Right now, we don't have time for this bullshit. Do the test again. And do it right. Anyone is not make mistakes in here.
I mean, there were people crying in that class. It was intense.
It was so important to him that sometimes the members who had jobs would not go to work in order to get their minimum ballet sessions. And he would have these huge productions of ballet, plays or whatever performances, but nobody would see them. They would do this whole elaborate thing, spend all this money that they all worked on that he didn't earn to make this huge ballet production that nobody actually really saw. Okay, why would anyone put up with this? It goes back to the knowing. So let's talk more about the knowing. So when you hear these members talk about receiving the knowing, they're like, it's this insane experience. It's like a religious experience. Some people are like, it's like I'm on LSD and there's colors and there's lights and euphoria. Well, basically what he does is he says he can transmit it through his fingers, and he essentially just pushes his fingers really hard on their eyes, as their eyes are closed, into their skull, essentially. If you've ever rubbed your eyes really hard or pushed them in really hard, you'll know that you'll start to see weird sort of lights, and it's an optical thing that happens from that pressure, and basically squeeze their eyeballs, and then they would have a weird optical reaction, and they would think that they saw God. And that's why they were dealing with all this shit. They were basically being degraded, used, and abused to maybe one day get their eyeballs squeezed. Sometimes he would do that to these members who went through all this shit to get the knowing. And they would be like, I didn't get, what? I didn't get the knowing. And he would be like, you're not spiritually ready to receive the knowing. I guess you're not ready. You're not enlightened enough. So it's on you. And they would mess with them. I think they said one member was there for 18 years and they never got the knowing. And they would see other members who were only there for several months getting the knowing. It was crazy, dude. It was crazy. Now it's the 90s and something major happened. One of the members has sort of this affair with another one. Eventually, the relationship ends because they're not allowed to have a relationship. And the male member, he has a very hard time with this. He cannot accept the fact that now, because of Michelle, the cult leader, he can't be with the woman he wants to be with. So he, not only does he leave the group, but then he goes to the public and he tells them hey, this group, the Buddafield, it's a cult. He goes specifically to the Cult Awareness Network. And there's this guy, Rick Ross, who's part of that. And the Buddafield becomes on this Cult Awareness Network's radar. And they're even public things where they're talking about this group as a cult.
He went to Cult Awareness Network, which was an organization run by Rick Ross.
When you have leaders who claim to speak for God, cannot be questioned by their followers, and have little, if any, accountability.
This was Michelle's worst fear, that the Buddafield was going to be called a cult.
Michelle freaks out. He's like, oh my God, I'm exposed. And so he decides he's going to change his name again. So he went from Jaime Gomez to Michelle Rostand, and now he changes his name to Andreas, like one word, like Madonna, except nothing like Madonna. They decide to leave Los Angeles. First, he leaves with a few members and they scout different places. They end up deciding we're going to move to Austin, Texas. And slowly the members all sort of relocate to Austin, Texas, and he's now Andreas, and they're still, though, operating like before, except now it's even worse because he's paranoid and he's sort of telling them like, see, every major spiritual leader like Jesus Christ, well, they were persecuted and I'm being persecuted just like Jesus. But he's like super paranoid. So he's telling them like, you guys need to be aware and alert and protect me. And so they're like not allowed to sleep and they're always on watch, but they're still having to do this like rigorous routine. And then he's telling them that they have to like basically hide. So he's having them lie to their family and be even more isolated, even more cut off. So it's like just intensifying all the bad aspects.
We did exercises in class to practice in case the FBI captured us.
I had no integrity at all. I would lie to my mother for him. He told me to say I had cancer so that he could be the great healer and heal me of my cancer that didn't exist.
He's still charging them $50 for the weekly cleansings and doing the things that he does during the cleansings. Now it's 1993 and something huge happens, okay? Waco. Remember, they're in Austin, Texas. The Waco thing happened in Waco, Texas. I said that weird.
Just 100 miles north of us, Waco happened. We watched in horror as 72 members of a presumed cult died during a government raid.
There was another cult, and this was the Branch Davidians, and the cult leader there was David Koresh. And there was this huge thing that happened, I'm sure you've heard of it, where the FBI, basically there was this siege, and so many people died. It was like this crazy situation, and this was a huge deal at the time. So Andreas is a cult leader in Texas, and he's watching this all unfold on the news. He's already paranoid, and he starts to think, oh my God, they're coming for me next. So what does he do? He decides to get plastic surgery, naturally. But he doesn't get it right away. He tests it on his followers first because he was afraid. He was like, is it safe? Is it going to look bad? I don't know. So I'm going to have them do it. I'm going to see what it looks like, and then I'll decide, which is insane. He also didn't pay for any of this. He doesn't pay for anything. So he basically is telling, like, for example, there was one member, this guy, he's like, you should get cheek implants. And so the guy gets cheek implants, and then Andreas decides that it doesn't look good, and so he doesn't get them. And now this guy just is stuck with these cheek implants that look crazy that he didn't even want and had to pay for. But he did do like a lot of filler, lip filler and Botox and like all that stuff. He was super obsessed with image and looking young. And also he wanted to disguise himself. And the same thing with another member with like chin implants. He had someone do a chin implant and then he was like, no, I don't like the way it looks. I'm not going to do it.
But I didn't know about the plastic surgery, but it started to look evident.
But he started to look very deformed and scary looking, really.
About a decade or so after they moved to Austin, another crazy thing happens. And now this is 2006. Okay. So what would happen is over the years, some of the members, they would get upset and they would leave. When they left, instead of being fully cut off, Andreas, he was very secretive and paranoid, so he would tell the current members to keep in contact with the ex-member so that they could keep tabs on them, like go to their home, sometimes like take any evidence or things that they could have about what was going on in the cult. And that was all like part of his paranoia. So there was one particular member who left for years and then came back. When they came back, when he was in Austin, it was really different, right? Things were even worse from when they decided to leave.
I didn't hear where this suddenly changed to it's all about him instead of all about your inner experience. I was like, what the fuck has this turned into? It's become a circus.
The Shakti of the Divine Mother has become alive.
And so this ex-member who came back and then left again. When they left the second time, they wrote this letter and they emailed it to the members. And it was basically this letter that exposed Andreas, aka Michelle, aka Jaime, of everything he's done. The email had like shocking allegations. He was basically telling them like, your guru is a scammer. These sessions, these cleansings, he's actually a hypnotherapist. He's hypnotizing you. By the way, he's also like abusing men sexually within the group while claiming to be celibate. He's telling you not to do these things, and he's doing something like 1,000,000 times worse. The email ends up creating a split, a divide within the cult. The people who were like, oh my God, it all makes sense. This is horrible. I'm out. And then the people that were like, lies, fairy tales, haters. No, we support him, our God. And so this sort of split was known within the group cult as the Big Ugly. What do you think Andreas did in response? Well, he decides to film a video and it totally backfires. It's a very weird video.
What this is cannot be put in a biographical letter. It doesn't need resumes about a story, untouched, unpolluted. May all beings wake up, not apologizing. I am in you. But in truth, there's no I, there's no you. So come.
It was so bad to the point that during this video, when he was filming, he had like some followers there. They like got up and left in the middle of him talking. So he's like, shit. He basically lost like half of his cult. And so he did what he has done before many times, which is move to a new location and change his name. So he moves to Hawaii, and now his name is not Andreas, it's Reyji, Reyji, which means God King, humble. Having lost half his members, he doubled the price of his cleansings to sort of make up for that. Now it's $100 a week for cleansings, and he's got like the most loyal followers around him who, despite all of that crap, still stay with him. So he is, quote unquote, okay, he's fine. Well, in this documentary, the documentary ends with this confrontation that happens where the ex-member who's filming the documentary confronts this leader, Reyji, whatever the fuck his name is. He confronts him on a beach in Hawaii, and it's a really weird.
When did you get here?
My birthday. And what are you doing?
Well, just being alive and enjoying.
You have a lot of disciples, I see, yeah?
No. People come and go.
Are you being a good boy?
No. I'm just being.
He had a yoga studio. Again, he was doing yoga classes just like he did in the beginning. He had his followers. He was recruiting new members. Then the movie came out. Okay. And this is when shit really hit the fan. This is the stuff I found out like when I researched what happened after the documentary. Because apparently, when the documentary was coming out, the filmmaker / ex-cult member, he wanted to have screening in Hawaii. And specifically, he wanted to have screenings like near where this cult leader was with his new followers because he wanted to spread awareness. It was to the point where they were putting like flyers in the mailboxes of all of the neighbors of where this cult leader was now living in Hawaii, saying, what does the flyer say? It says, the film he doesn't want you to see. Holy Hell is available on iTunes, Amazon, and soon will be on Netflix. So when it was time for the screening, he had current cult members go to the screenings and threaten the cult members who were part of the documentary. After one of the screenings, there was like a question and answer session. And one of the former members who still lived in Hawaii was there on stage with his wife. And these current members, they basically like bum rush the stage and they start yelling. They called him, quote, dipshit, dumbass. They said, call off your psychotic chihuahua wife. They like come on stage. There's almost this altercation. And then he claims that he was also like cornered in an alley in Hawaii, like in that area where he lives, and they threatened his life. And that when the filmmaker and all the production people were ready to leave Hawaii, he was like, "What? Are you guys going to leave me here with them? They're going to kill me." He ends up filing a police report. Turns out the people who threatened him live where the cult leader lives, and one of them is actually his bodyguard. But it's like, even when these things come out and police get involved, it never like implicates the cult leader directly, and he's never gone to jail or anything for what he's done. Reggie, Michelle, Andreas, Jaime, I don't know what you want to call him, he released a statement when the documentary was aired, like he sent it to CNN. And he said, "It is heartbreaking to see how history has been rewritten. Holy Hell is not a documentary. Rather, it is a work of fiction designed to create drama, fear, and persecution, knowing that is what sells. I am saddened by this attempt to obscure the message of universal love and spiritual awakening. It is devastating to see these friends, who were once so filled with love for the world, become so angry. I wish them only the best and hold each one close to my heart. If any of my actions were a catalyst for their disharmony, I am truly sorry. May all beings find peace." Where is he now? What is going on now? So apparently, okay, he's like, I think in his 80s now. Neighbors say that he's still in Hawaii. He still has his cult. He still teaches yoga, but like not directly, but there's like sort of people who teach yoga and it sort of funnels to him, and he's like living off of that money, but he's not actually there doing it himself publicly. Like slowly, when they get filtered into like the secret groups, do they have access to him? And they say that they see him, the neighbors, walking around with a cane and like a surgical mask in disguise. Also, there's a few things that I don't want to confuse. There's another group called Buddafield. They're out of the UK. They're not this cult. So don't confuse that Buddha. They still have like festivals and things going on today. That is not the same thing as this. And then also his yoga studio in Hawaii. I was trying to find out like what he was doing currently. And so I searched it up. Now, it was called Aloha Yoga Kula. But when you like look at the different addresses that are registered for this business, one is like on Google Maps, it's showing a church. And then the other address is showing a different yoga studio that I don't want to name because I'm not sure it's affiliated. Then I found different social media pages that seem to be connected to that name but have renamed. And it's like, I don't know if they're just rebranding and they are that group or if they have nothing to do with that group. So I don't want to name them because I would hate for people to think that like they're part of that cult when they're not. But that is basically what we know about where he is right now. I found this one article that says they think he's making at least $1 million or something annually from the cleansings, the members, and the yoga studio classes, although none of that is verifiable, but that would be like actually insane. Every time I make videos about cults, there's a particular comment that I get pretty often. Most people are like, "Oh, this sucks, this is awful," but I always get a decent amount of people saying, "I'm sorry, like these people, they're adults, like who would fall for this? I'd never fall for this. I don't even feel sorry for them. Like what the hell? They like, come on." It's like when you look at the email that was sent and how half of the people said, "I'm done," the other half that stayed, okay? Are they victims at that point, knowing everything they know, having an out, seeing other people can leave, and they're not only choosing to stay, but then they're harassing the members that left? What do we think about that? I would love to know your opinion. Like the way I see it is kind of like, I feel bad. I also feel like there's an element of personal responsibility, but also I acknowledge the power dynamics and how it could happen. I don't know. I guess I'm confused. Anyway, I would love to know what you guys think about that. Please let me know. Thank you so much to Every Plate for supporting my channel, and I will see you guys in the next one. Bye.